Okay, children, now we can continue with the equilibrium part of the chapter number 12, that is theory of income and employment. Okay, so we already know that an economy can achieve or can attain the equilibrium level when the aggregate demand is equals to aggregate supply. This basic concept of aggregate demand and supply can be uh, we can refer with the market mechanism. Okay, that is your D is equals to S. That is your demand is equals to supply. Okay, so that is the basic concept of demand and supply. That is in case of microeconomics. We have already understood this part, isn't it? So this is also known as the market mechanism or or invisible hand theory of Adam Smith, the father of economics. Okay, so the same concept has been applied out here in case of macroeconomics. So the equilibrium can attain the situation when aggregate demand is equals to your aggregate supply. Okay. Now, how can we determine the level of equilibrium income and equilibrium output in case of macroeconomics? And to understand this concept of equilibrium, we have two approaches. Okay. And that is your ADAS approach, that is the aggregate demand and aggregate supply approach. And the other approach is savings and investment approach. Okay, so how we can derive these two approaches, how we are able to reach this conclusion point, that where we can have AD is equals to, sorry, ADAS approach and SI approach. How? So far we have discussed about this consumption function and savings function, right? So from there we can derive these two approaches. Okay, so ADAS approach and SI approach. Okay, now this is your ADAS approach. Okay, so what is this? It's very simple. I should have included this after the graph. Anyway, so this is your ADAS approach. Okay, and we already know that this line, this is your income, but we have already discussed that this income, why it can be equals to your AS. Okay, so AS equals to Y. Okay, so this line is your AS and this AD is your curve. Okay, so this is your aggregate demand curve. Now let us see the following observations out here. Now when aggregate demand is more than aggregate supply, okay, then this curve, it lies above the 45-degree line. As a result, your planned inventory would fall below the desired level. Okay, it's very simple concept. If your planned output is, let us just say, only 100 units, okay, and the demand is more, let us say the demand is for 120, so don't you think that your output level has been decreased by 20 units when the demand is more and your aggregate supply is less? Okay, so this is the uh, situation of excess demand. Okay, unfortunately we don't have to study about this aggregate demand and I mean this excess demand, okay, deficient demand, excess supply, deficient supply. We don't have to study in great detail. Okay, so it has been excluded for this year. Still, you can read the book if you want to understand the concept. Okay, so this is in your page number 218. Okay, 12 point unit 12.10. Okay, so this is the condition where your AD is more than your AS. Let me just show you in the graph only. So see, so at this point, AD, when your AD is more than your aggregate supply. So at this situation, this line, it lies above the 45-degree line. It is lying above it. Okay, however, at some point of time, it will intersect the 45-degree line. It has to, and it will intersect this line. Okay, and that when it intersects, that is the situation of your equilibrium. And we have been seeing this situation since the beginning, since we started discussing about the consumption function. So see, you can see out here, this uh, y, or you can say the AS line, is intersecting your consumption at this point E. So this point E is the break-even point or equilibrium point. Let me just show you one more graph. See, this is the break-even point. That is your equilibrium. Okay. Okay. But when your aggregate demand is less than your aggregate supply, then your AD curve lies below the 45-degree line, and as a result, the planned inventory would rise. What is that? Let us assume that this is the line. Okay, CC. Okay, that is your AD. Okay, let us assume that it to be AD line. Okay, I have taken this graph from the internet, so it's written out here C equals to autonomous consumption plus induced consumption. Let us just ignore that part and let us assume that this is your AD1 and AD2. Okay, or your AD1 or AD2, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so this will lie below the AS. I mean below the 45-degree line. Okay, so it is actually you're showing that your planned supply was was more than the demand. Let us say that the level of output was 100. Okay, you cooked 100 momos. Very simple. But there was only demand of 80 units of momo. So now at this point, you are having extra unsold momos equals to 20. So this is the situation where your aggregate supply is more than your aggregate demand. Okay, and don't get confused with this line. Okay, lies above 45-degree line or lies below 45-degree line. In all the cases, it will lie above it only. Okay, I mean, we already know that this aggregate demand, okay, this is your AD curve, okay, or consumption curve, whatever you want to call it. It will start from a point, not from the zero, okay, somewhere out here, okay, and then it will intersect. Okay, so don't get confused with that part. Okay, but however we can see that this is lying above and this is lying below. Okay, and in both the cases, market will be in equilibrium. Okay, your economy will achieve the equilibrium point, because when your AD is more than aggregate supply, okay, so this is your AD is more than aggregate supply, you can achieve equilibrium. But again, when your AD is less than aggregate supply, still you are able to achieve the equilibrium. Okay, and it must be noted that equilibrium level may or may not be at the level of full employment. Remember, so this is a very important concept, okay, of ADAS approach. It's very simple. Whether your aggregate demand is more than aggregate supply or aggregate demand is less than aggregate supply, so in both these cases, market will be in the equilibrium. Okay, your economy, sorry, not the market, but your economy will be in the equilibrium point. Okay, so let us assume that this is your situation of AD more than AS, and this line AD is less than AS. So in both these cases, your equilibrium can be achieved. Okay, and it should be noted that this equilibrium, okay, may or may not be at the level of full employment. Okay, now SI approach, very simple concept. This is it. Now when savings is more than investment, it means that the households are not consuming as the firm expects. Okay, so as a result, again, what happens? The desired level of inventory would rise. Okay, which means that AD is smaller than AS, in simple language. Okay, that is, the consumers or the household are not spending the money for the consumption purpose, but there is a leakage out here. Okay, so whenever the saving is made by the household, that is called the leakage in the economy. Okay, but when the uh, RBI or the government, okay, it purchases, okay, we will discuss about that repo rate and all, okay, at the end. Then there will be the injection in market. Okay, so there are two aspects out here. When saving is made by the household, that is called leakage. Okay, but when the extra investment is made, or if extra amount of money is put into the economy, then that is called injection. Okay, so when your this saving is more than investment, it means that the households are not consuming. You know, the firm will have the expectation. Let us assume the same example only. 100 units of momo. Okay, so now 100 units of momo were produced, but the consumers, they want to save money, and at this point of time they only consumed 80 units of momo. So which means your AD is smaller than your AS. So at this situation, okay, when this happens, your demand is less, supply is more. Okay, but when the saving is less than your investment, it means that the households are consuming more and more and saving less and less. So which means that this is a situation of excess demand. 100 units of momo, the same example, but the consumers, they want to consume more and more and they want to save less, so they will spend their money. Okay, the consumers will have more disposable income. Okay, then the demand will increase and your supply will decrease. Okay, this is a very simple concept. And okay, we can try to understand from this graph. Initially the saving will be negative, that is your dis saving. We already know that part, right? And your saving, okay, your saving, as your saving it increases, okay, it becomes positive, right? It becomes a positive. And we already know that this, there is a case of the autonomous investment, right? I have explained you that part in the previous video, that is the video number 2. Okay, autonomous investment. Then here, when it reaches, when your S is equals to I, then it will be in the equilibrium situation. Okay, so when your S is equals to I, then that situation is your equilibrium. Okay, now remember, now let us try to draw conclusion out here by both the methods. When this ADAS approach, SI approach, remember, according to this ADAS approach, equilibrium can be achieved at any point. So let us assume this is your first equilibrium situation, and with rise in income, your this consumption also increases. So now it has been shifted from E1 to E2. Okay, and between E1 and E2 there are infinite possibilities of the equilibrium situation. Okay, there can be infinite number of equilibrium condition, remember, in case of ADAS approach. But in case of SI approach, S must be equals to I. S must be equals to I, then only equilibrium can be achieved. Okay, and now according to James Keynes, equilibrium level can be achieved at 3 conditions are given: full employment equilibrium, underemployment equilibrium, and over full employment equilibrium. That is actually the excess usage of the resources. Okay, so full employment equilibrium. Okay, let us just try to understand them in brief. Full employment equilibrium. Now, it is a situation when your AD is equals to AS at full employment, or when the resources are utilized fully. Okay, so that is the condition of full employment equilibrium. Okay, but the underemployment equilibrium can be a situation where your AD is equals to AS, but at a condition of underemployment, or when the resources are not fully utilized. And the last one, that is your over full employment equilibrium, which means your AD will be equals to AS, but over the full employment, or you can say the overutilization of the resources. Okay, so if this condition, okay, this condition is very, very dangerous, by the way, over full employment, because if there is the situation of over full employment or the overutilization of the resources, then these resources will be exhausted at a faster rate. Okay, and over full employment means we have to uh, bring in extra number of labor from outside. Okay, we have to hire laborers from foreign countries like Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, etc., etc., because all the residents of our country, India, they are employed. Okay, they are having a job, but still there are more vacancies. So then we have to uh, hire labor force from other countries. So this is a very dangerous situation. Okay, and this underemployment also, this is not good, by the way, because if the underemployment situation it happens, then there will be the problem of unemployment in our country. Okay, and the resources will not be fully utilized. Okay, and remember that these conditions are suggested by J.M. Keynes, the father of macroeconomics. Okay, you should remember that part. Now, investment multiplier, I'll discuss this in the next video.